My name's Jeffrey Saddoris, and I want to welcome you to this, I guess it's the third installment of this audio call-in experiment. Can you hear that? Let me turn it up for you. How about now? Can you hear that? That sound is the sound of the cicadas. And from the time that I was, 4, maybe 5, until my senior year in high school, the cicadas were sort of the soundtrack to my summers along the Colorado River. These were recorded outside our house just north of D.C. a couple weeks ago. And the first time I heard them after we moved here, that sound brought me right back. Before we had a house at Lake Havasu, we had this little Aljo trailer along the Colorado River at a trailer park called Windmill. And it was at the very back row of the park, furthest from the water and closest to the road. And across this little gravel parking lot was a long line of tamarisk trees that bordered the park. And these were the temporary homes for the cicadas. And after long days on the water, their rhythm, that sort of hypnotic rhythm, would lull us to sleep until the next morning when we'd get up and do it all over again. And every summer since we've moved to this house, I still look forward to the sound of falling asleep to the cicadas. You know, I've got to tell you that I was really nervous about doing this, and I still am, frankly. But I think it's got the potential to turn into something interesting, maybe even something special. So I want to thank you again for those of you who've listened to episode 1 and listened to episode 2. I really appreciate it. Looks like we've got a call already. Tell you what, hold off on this. I'll get to calls in just a second, okay? I want to tell you about something before we get to the calls. Boy, persistent. Hi, who's this?
Hey, this is Tom in Michigan.
Hey, Tom in Michigan. Can you give me a few minutes? I'm gonna talk about something real quick, and then I'll take some calls. Can you give me just like 5 minutes?
Yeah. Do you want me to hang in the line, or do you want me to call back?
No, just give me a call back in about 5 minutes.
Yeah, you got it.
Okay. Thanks, Tom.
All right. Yeah, bye.
Like I said, I just want to thank you for those of you who have listened to the first 2 episodes and who have called in and been really generous with your stories. Last year, I had an idea for a show that I had every intention of starting this year. In fact, I was all set to begin production in March, but COVID happened. And I thought, like many of us, maybe you did too, that we would listen to science, take appropriate action, the curve would flatten, and things would suck for a couple of months, but then we'd start to get back to normal, right? But as it turns out, we didn't, and it didn't, and there's really no such thing as normal anymore. So this show I wanted to do it's called A Day's Work, and it's my attempt to sort of build on some of the work that Studs Terkel did starting in the 40s. Studs was a radio broadcaster who recorded conversations with people, thousands of people, over a period of several decades. And he talked to them about what they did, their work, and how they felt about it. And the project inspired a book called Working, which was published in 1974. 75? 74. I think 74. Anyway, so I thought it would be really interesting to see how people's feelings about work and the work itself have changed in the past 50 or so years since working was produced. And originally I wanted to record the conversations in person, just like Studs did, but with COVID still here and in many places on the rise again, that just doesn't seem possible. So I've decided to sort of tweak the scope of it, make some changes, at least for now, and record the conversations remotely. And I'll have more information about it on my site in the coming weeks. But basically, in addition to reaching out to people directly, I want to post available times so that you can book time with me, maybe a half hour at a time, maybe an hour. I don't know. I haven't decided on that part yet. And we can record a conversation about what you do and how you feel about it, what you bring to it, and maybe what you get from it. And see if it becomes something interesting. And so that's it. So be sure to subscribe, either subscribe to Jeffrey Saddoris Everything, or just follow me on Instagram or Twitter at Jeffrey Saddoris. That's where I'll be posting kind of updates on all of these things. So a couple things I wanted to talk about tonight and maybe open it up to you. I mean, we can talk about anything you want, but this might get the juices going, as it were. A couple books one I read a while back and one I'm currently reading right now, talking about ideas and genius and in fact, one of them is called Where Good Ideas Come From by Stephen Johnson. The first book, and I read this a few months ago, it's called Organizing Genius, and it's by Warren Bennis and Patricia Ward Biederman. And it takes a look at the idea of groups, specific groups. The group that worked on the Manhattan Project is one. The Lockheed group that worked on the SR-71, Skunk Works, Macintosh, Apple, and a few other groups, to look at the commonalities of these groups or teams that have generated an extraordinary amount of good ideas, right? And it's a fascinating book. So that led me to another book, which is called Where Great Ideas Come From, as I mentioned, by Stephen Johnson. And the big takeaway from this book is something he calls the adjacent possible. And I'll give you an example of the adjacent possible. One of the examples that they use in the book is the idea of incubators in a hospital, particularly in third world countries. Incubators get sent to third world countries, but they have neither the expertise or the parts to repair them when they break. So within 5 years, better than 90%, I think it's better than 95% of these machines stop working, which is a shame because just by adding an incubator into the mix, infant mortality tends to drop by orders of magnitude, right? So there was a group that was looking at this, and what they found was that in third world countries, automobiles are everywhere. And they are able to keep automobiles running for a long time. Parts are plentiful. It doesn't take a great deal of expertise relative to repairing scientific equipment. So this company had the idea to build an incubator out of automobile parts so that if something went bad, a bulb, for example, it was as easy as swapping out a car headlight. And it was wildly successful. And it speaks to the idea of looking at things from a slightly different angle. And my mother used to always tell me to look at things as if looking through a kaleidoscope, right? It doesn't take much of a turn, of a twist for what you're looking at to change dramatically, right? Or if you want to borrow from one of my favorite movies, Contact, small moves, Ellie, right? So this is a fantastic book, and it's kind of hitting me where I live at the moment because I regularly struggle with the idea of ideas and where do they come from. And some people are of the opinion that you simply wait for genius to strike. You simply wait for the muse to settle softly on your shoulder and give you some pearl of wisdom or some great idea or some brilliant photograph or painting or written work. But that's typically not the way it works. And in quite a few case studies in this book, we see examples of that. One of them, in fact, was a guy named Kevin Dunbar at McGill University studied this group of scientists in a molecular biology lab. And what he found was that the breakthrough ideas didn't happen in solitary, nor did they happen at the microscope, but they happened at the lunch table. They happened at the conference room. They happened when groups of people got together and talked about what they were working on, either individually or collectively, and then went back and let those ideas, let those concepts, let those conversations sort of percolate and come up with something new. And we see this not just in science, but in art. If you've ever seen Pollock, terrific movie, I can't recommend it enough. Pollock hangs out with de Kooning and other artists and poets, and out of that you could argue that his genius maybe wasn't born, but certainly was nudged in different directions, right? So I'm fascinated by all this, and I wanted to get some feedback on it, maybe see what you guys think. I think it's a fascinating topic. I spend a lot of time thinking about it, writing about it, reading about it. But what do you think? Let's open this up. I know Tom from Michigan is going to call, and I can't wait to talk to him. But give me a call, 202-539-0209. You can also Skype me at Saddoris, Saddoris. And in the meantime, this is a tune by Paolo Pavan. This is Urban Slanging. Here we go. All right, I'm actually going to cut this a little short because on the phone from way back, Tom in Michigan.
Uh-oh. Yeah.
Well, I guess
I'm
you're
back
now
to
Tom in Illinois, right?
I am briefly. Yes, I'm in downtown Chicago. Empty Chicago, it feels like.
Is it completely just surreal now?
Well, it is. We got here yesterday on a gig, and we're staying at the Lowe's downtown. But the giant Sheraton hotel right across from us is closed. I don't like. I looked out. I'm looking out my window at it right now, and yesterday when I got here, I'm like, there's no lights on over there, and down by the lobby, it's like shuttered. And I don't know if it's because of COVID. I don't know if they're remodeling it. It is a little bit of an older building, but then just on the streets around here, there's just not that many people. It's weird. It's beautiful here. It's like 80 degrees. It's like summer weather, and there's just not the normal. It feels very weird.
Have you ever experienced it like that before?
Oh gosh, no. And I've been to Chicago many, many times. And I mean, even in the winter, it's, there's people hustling around. And I know we went to a restaurant last night out a little bit west of, directly downtown, probably just like a couple miles out there. It's kind of hipster neighborhood that's up and coming. And there were definitely like big outdoor seatings of places. And we went to a place, an Italian joint called Piccolo. Piccolo something.
Please tell me it's Piccolo Pete. Please tell me it's Piccolo Pete.
It's not Piccolo Pete.
Damn it.
Anyway, so there were people out, doing things, and but everybody on the streets was wearing masks. I was encouraged to see that, and so they're taking it seriously. It seems like in Chicago. But anyway, I don't know. Hey, thanks for having me on, man. I want to say that I am. This is a cool thing that you got going, and
thank you.
I'm excited to see it evolve.
I'm nervous. I feel like I'm a chimp trying to write Shakespeare on a typewriter.
Well, fill it with enough chimps and enough typewriters, and you'll get there. No, but you've inspired me for years. And
thank you.
Ever since OTP ended, which I'm still recovering from because I didn't have anybody to call every week.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry we left you hanging.
You did, man. I called the number, it wouldn't pick up. I'm like, oh no. So when you did this, I'm like, okay.
We moved away and didn't tell you.
You did. Actually, I've met Bill in person 2 different times now.
Right.
Because I've gone to New York, and then he actually put me in his 365 portrait series, which at that point was, probably like 700 and some odd. I don't know.
Right.
He was, I think, in his 3rd year of it. That was a little over a year ago in the spring. But anyway, no,
Can I tell you something?
Guys,
I think I've only been with Bill in person twice, maybe 3 times, but I don't think it's been more than that.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Isn't that wild?
You guys had a serious rapport, man, and you had a great following, and it was awesome.
Thank you. I just talked to him the other day, by the way.
Favorite? Did you?
Yeah.
I check in with him every now and then, but one of my favorite episodes that you guys did, and you only did this once, and I think this could be a cool thing down the road for you with your conversations, is when you guys took that walk together.
Oh yeah, he was down in DC. I think he was visiting his sister, maybe.
I think it was in DC.
We did the National Mall. Yeah. Yeah,
it was a great. I think that's a cool idea to take go for a walk with somebody. You don't do it all the time, but it's something that it was neat. It was fresh. It was you talked about things that you saw on the way, and
right,
it was good stuff.
Yeah, it was fun. I remember that episode very fondly, and I think we got some grief for huffing up the stairs at Lincoln.
You did. Oh.
But hey, you go do those stairs. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh man. So anyway,
well, what are you doing in Chicago? Are you making good things happen? Are you?
Oh no, I'm. So what I do for a living, I'm a sound man.
Right.
I'm a freelance sound man, and I've been working with the same cameraman out of the Detroit area for 21 years now, and we do mainly network news stuff. Like on this particular gig, I'm working for CBS 48 Hours, just doing some interviews for their show.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, this particular gig, we're only shooting the reporter end of it. Ever since COVID, the standard operating procedure pretty much for everybody is doing these Zoom meetings, but setting it up like, we're shooting a shot of the reporter, and we set up the computer where the guest would normally be sitting.
Right.
And you create the Zoom link, and you feed the audio and the picture down the line. So everybody's, you get all the eye lines right and everything. So they can cut it so it looks like they're sitting in the same room.
Right.
but they're talking over a Zoom meeting. Like there's a crew down in Alabama interviewing, the people on the other end of this thing. And that's the way it's been going. I mean, producers aren't coming out into the field, basically at all. I mean, it's just, it's really, it's strange.
Do you see it changing anytime soon, even under sort of severe sort of safety precautions, or is this the new normal? Are the days of in-person interviews gone?
No, it's definitely not gone, but for the time being, I will say that like CBS and NBC, who we mainly work for, and ABC, we do a little bit of ABC work too. The networks have been quite aggressive about safety and protocol, and we have to check in with a virtual nurse in the morning and just take your temperature, and somebody sees it and verifies your ID. So they've taken it very seriously, and we're basically not allowed to go inside. When we're doing here we're in, a ballroom of a hotel that we've set up a little, typical kind of mobile studio thing in. But when we're doing a guest of the other day we talked to a professor at Michigan State University and we shot it outside because they don't even want you going inside. So it's going to get weird when it gets colder here because, we're not going to sit down for an hour-long interview sitting in the snow. But
has your kit changed as a result of all this, or are the actual logistics or mechanics of what you do, has that changed, or are you still using the same gear, same equipment, same sort of protocols?
We're still using all the same gear. What we've added is a computer, a capture card for the camera to go into the computer, and then basically that sends the audio and the picture. So it's really just adding the whole Zoom element to it. But like when you're outside, you have to worry about, using hotspots on your phone that aren't always reliable. And, so that can be kind of sketchy. So far it's worked okay. But, it's just, it's the not having, a producer in the field. That's really kind of the odd thing, because they're taking care of, logistics and dealing with our guest and, taking the guest out to lunch and just handling them while we do all the lighting and sound and get set up. Now it's just us showing up, and we're, so.
Are those duties now on you? Are you taking over those roles, or do those roles just not exist anymore?
They're kind of non-existent. It's like, it does feel a little bit, I mean, not to be, make a pun of it, I feel like it's a little bit phoned in, and we are phoning it in. But I mean, yeah, I know, exactly. But it's, just show up here at this time, and okay, the person comes out and you do the thing. And even shooting B-roll, the extra, cut shots that we get is very limited. You might get you can't go into the house and get the family making dinner with the kids. It should be like a typical thing, you're shooting somebody. That will change down the road, but when, I don't know. But the networks are being very cautious about it. So,
I mean, that's a good thing, right? That's a good thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely, man. I mean,
somebody's got to listen to science.
Exactly. Oh, dude, it's just, it's bananas.
Yeah.
I don't even, I can't hardly even talk about it. But,
right.
You know what I mean?
Well, I'm so glad to hear your voice, and
yeah, good to hear you too.
This number, put this one in your Rolodex now. Wow, Rolodex. Wow. Those were things made of paper, kids.
This will be the only number in it. No, I'll look forward to calling back sometime, and I'll try to check in. That's the whole thing, is that, and I was trying to figure out when you were going live, because I listened to 1 and 2, and I was like, when did he do this?
I'm still trying to figure out a consistent time. And today was a little later because we had to take Cooper, our dog, to the vet for his final heartworm, all clear blood draw, which if you've ever had a dog with heartworm, if you haven't, next month will be a year that this process started a year ago with, keeping him on reduced activity and steroids and antibiotics and then, the actual medicine that kills the worms. And man, it's it's a slog. And so this was his sort of final all clear. He's healthy. Everything's good. So now we can,
good puppy.
Yeah. Now we can,
that's awesome.
Travel again and, you know, that kind of thing. So,
yeah, I've got, 2 German short-haired pointers that are not quite, they'll be turning 3 next month.
Oh, wow.
And,
are they related? Are they siblings?
Yeah. They're brother and sister. They're amazing, but they're bird hunting dogs. I actually don't bird hunt, but I run them in fields and stuff, and it's amazing to watch them point, and it's awesome. But anyway, last year my female ate part of a beach towel, and that was a $4,000 emergency surgery to get that out of her gut. And then this year, the male blew out his ACL, and that wasn't quite as expensive, but it was a lot. And then he had to be on a leash for almost 3 months. So finally that's over. These are dogs that run, 100 miles an hour for, an hour at a time. It's crazy.
Right.
So anyway, yeah, dogs. And then ever since I got dogs, I don't even think about my kids anymore. It's like kids, I don't know. They're all teenagers. I don't know what they're doing. I got to go walk the dog.
Yeah, right. Oh, that's funny.
So,
anyway, I'm so glad to hear your voice, man. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Voice.
Yeah, don't be a stranger.
I love what you're doing, man. Last thing, I love the idea of a little conversation and turn, playing a tune, some interesting stuff. And
thanks.
It's a cool format, just like those spaces in between, just
right,
talking a little bit and rolling a tune. It's fun to see it evolve. So I'm thanks for having me on. And
my pleasure.
I'll check back in a few weeks or something, and we'll maybe have another chat. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I said, I'm trying to figure out a regular time on this. So I'm thinking, it's hard because if I do it early to hit the U.S., East and West Coast, then it's you miss the U.K. And if I do it later, then it might be an alternating thing where I do 5 o'clock one week, 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock the next week or something like that to try and fit everybody in because I want to talk to as many people as possible and I don't want you to have to stay up until 2 a.m. to talk to a knucklehead like me.
Right. Hey, last thought.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of Sam Harris.
Oh, yeah, sure.
He says,
terrific podcast.
He says, conversation is the only tool that we have. And a series of, as he puts it, I mean, I'm paraphrasing, a series of successful conversations between people because we're just in such a hard environment, man. It's really tough. So we got to keep talking, and we got to keep talking to people that differ from us. So
I love it.
Anyway, I'll leave you with that. And
no, I love it, and I think he's right.
I think he's right.
Yeah, please do. Look for me on Wednesdays.
I will.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, sir. I'll talk to you soon. Okay.
All right. Thanks.
All right. See ya.
Take care.
All right.
Bye-bye.
All right, man. What a good guy, Tom in Michigan. Okay, I'm going to play another tune. And then if you feel like calling in, saying hello, 202-539-0209, or you can Skype me at Saddoris. I actually got to talk to one of my favorite DJs this morning. And believe it or not, it's not that I'm a DJ, but it's an interesting segue. It's the first time that I've ever gotten through to talk to somebody that I actually listen to and really dig, and that's Monty at the river up in Massachusetts. I think is that where they're at? Anyway, terrific station. All right, so this is Jahzzar. This is No Control. Talk to you in a bit. Oh, I dig that tune. Hey, in talking about all of this creativity and ideas, if you feel like calling in, let me know what you think of all this. Do you have singular ideas? Do you get ideas from talking to people? Where do you get your best ideas, and how do you do your best work? If you've ever heard of Brian Eno, anybody ever heard of Brian Eno? I'm sure you have. Terrific musician, great thinker, a futurist. He's got this idea that he calls Scenius. And it's basically the idea is that genius takes the form of this communal action, that it happens out of a group, that it happens out of a collective, that it doesn't just sort of spontaneously happen while you're holed up in your warehouse wearing black, listening to The Cure, waiting for genius to happen. That it is this almost collaborative act. And I've definitely seen this in my own life. Kind of going back to the Pollock example, there was that scene in the film where Pollock sits there and he's staring at the canvas for weeks, waiting for something to happen. And while it finally does, in the meantime, he has been engaging with these other artists, with these other thinkers, with poets, with musicians, with painters, collectors. And I have to believe that some of that stuff bubbles up to the surface through other people. At least that's been my experience. If I sit down and just try and formulate some brilliant body of work or formulate some terrific idea, by and large, it doesn't happen. It typically comes on the back of something else. It typically comes on the back of either thinking about something else entirely or taking a break from it all. I mean, this painting project that I did a couple of months ago now really was born out of taking a break from social media, because I found that the noise that I was reading daily, multiple times a day, doom scrolling, I think is the term that they've used to describe some of this. It was just wrecking me. It was absolutely wrecking me, and I couldn't focus, and all I could think about was what was going wrong and what was happening in the world, and I wasn't focusing on making or putting something interesting or maybe even beautiful into the world. So taking a break from that, pulling back from that, allowed me to move forward. And I don't think that anything that I've done so far is genius. I don't think it's anywhere close to that. But movement in and of itself has to happen to get there, right? You have to take the 10,000 bad photographs. You have to paint the 10,000 bad paintings, hopefully not that many. You've got to write through the bad stuff to get to the good stuff. And I think for me, it gets to a point where once I do have the idea, once I do have a concept or have a direction, then I have to shut down. I have to not look at other things. I have to not take in anymore, because for me, that tends to dilute what it is that I'm doing. It tends to almost confuse where I think I want to go, because now I'm going, wow, this person's doing some interesting things. Maybe I could work that into what I'm doing. This person's got some great stuff. Maybe I could take a little bit of that. And what was one idea, one concept, one direction ends up getting splintered, and ultimately the work either doesn't go the way I want it to, or it goes nowhere at all because I'm too frustrated to begin, right? And maybe that's happened to you, that the idea of putting something out into the world, that's hard enough, right? But we also then levy these expectations on ourselves that it has to be good, whatever that means. And I've got my little air quotes here, good. John Wilkening and I have spent, hours talking about good and what is good and what does it mean and who gets to decide what good is. And I still don't have an answer for you other than I don't think it's me, right? I don't think I get to decide what's good. I get to decide what's true. I get to decide what's done, what it is that I want to put into the world. But good seems to be, that seems to be in the hands of someone else, in the same way that calling something art. I don't think I can say that what I make is art or not, because I think that's partially at least the viewer's job. I think it does it move you? Does it engage you? Does it transform your way of thinking? Does it make you angry, make you sad? Whatever the emotions are, does it evoke some sort of reaction? And if so, then maybe that's a good enough definition for art. I don't know. It's something that I think I've been fluid on. I think my opinion on it has changed as I've gotten maybe deeper into making myself. I think that looking at some of these things from the outside in gives you one perspective, but when you find yourself on the inside, at least partially, then I think your opinion can change. It's fascinating and frustrating and exciting and all of those things all at the same time. So I'm going to play one more thing, and feel free to call in. Well, maybe I won't play one thing. Hold on one sec. Let's take a call. Hi, who's this?
Hey, this is Richard Boutwell.
Richard Boutwell? Oh my gosh. Yeah. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing really well. Thank you.
Good to hear it.
Where are you? Remind me again where you are.
I'm just outside of Philadelphia.
Oh, okay, so you're close-ish.
Yeah. I've actually, this is like, I don't want to, all right, first, I don't want to talk about COVID. Second, I'm going to talk about COVID. No, we were down.
Wait a minute, I'm confused.
My in-laws lived outside of DC. So We've been down there back and forth. We were down there for almost a month in March.
Oh, really?
And let me tell you, you talking to Sean, I don't know how many days a week you're doing it, but I was chasing our toddler around the house, and my wife's trying to work, and I'm listening in. It kind of got me through some of those days. So,
thank you.
Thank you.
No, thank you. I appreciate that. It's, he's an easy guy to talk to, and I am grateful to call him one of my friends.
Well, he's one of those few people I think on YouTube who kind of, in terms of the way I look at and feel about things, really gets it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just kind of good to hear those voices rather than we're going to go here and it's going to be blah, blah, all the excitement and energy. It's that's good for some people. I really appreciate Sean's view too on it.
That's
cool.
Man,
this conversation and this book you recommend, you said you're going to talk about, is so timely. It's
really? In what way? Tell me.
Yeah. So, well, and also the thing you're just talking about, where the working through the ideas, you get the spark, and then you have to go heads down and not look at anything else and do it. I feel like I've been doing that the last week or two, and kind of maybe all came to a head last night. Actually, listened to some of the book, so I don't know, it's just interesting, good timing. But I don't know. I kind of want to, when you brought up the subject, wanted to give a little anecdote about kind of where ideas come from.
Please.
It's somebody. So I worked for a couple of photographers for like almost 20 years, which is kind of scary to think about. But one of the guy, he started photographing in the 60s and started shooting 8x10 in like kind of late 60s, and did a couple, like 3 like really long trips out west. And he's from Philadelphia.
Mm-hmm.
So he made like 700 negatives on one trip in like 75.
Wow.
With 8x10.
With 8x10?
Like 10 months on the road.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then, he had this 8x20 camera.
Oh my gosh.
And he's like, okay, I've done a bunch of 8x10s. Let me use the 8x20.
Right, as one does.
A bunch of film and all that stuff. Yeah. I mean, so this is probably 78.
Wow.
And so he said he made a few, and this is like a story he would tell in his workshop and have like some, visual aids and stuff. But like, just imagine kind of like an 8x10 landscape. And so he said like he was making 8x20 landscapes that looked just like his 8x10. He was like, what the hell am I doing carrying this camera that weighs 20 more pounds?
Right.
With these film holders that's harder to develop, harder to print, all this stuff. So he kind of put it away. And when he was in the Grand Canyon, he wanted to get a book to identify some of the birds he was seeing in Grand Canyon.
Mm-hmm.
So he grabbed one of those, like, you've probably seen this, like the Birds of North America.
Sure, the Audubon guides. Yeah.
Like kind of exactly, like one of the blue covers,
Yep, absolutely. Had to carry one around in high school.
Yeah, so the little sonograms in there where it's like the frequency of the bird songs?
Right, yes.
So he said he was like flipping through that, and he sees these kind of long format, little bird-songy, periodic and rhythmic marks that represent the bird song. And he like that clicked and said, this is exactly what my 8x10s I need to explore with. And so he's like,
really,
probably a decade at that point photographing and like making, hundreds of negatives a year probably.
Right.
And in like a flash like that, like his entire work and like the rest of basically the rest of his like working life explored that idea.
Wow.
And it, so it wasn't about that idea, right?
But right.
It's about like that visual metaphor that allows you to see things in like a totally new way, where otherwise you're just like, all right, it's a long 8x10, like cool. But
right.
But seeing that way is like super interesting, and yeah, it's I don't know. So anyway, like in terms of the where ideas come from, it's kind of like in the book, it's like Darwin he had everything in terms of like looking at the journals, like had everything for the theory of evolution all in place.
Right.
And it was some other spark that allowed him to connect it all together.
Right, to connect all the dots.
It happens all the time, in every single like possible way. It's just kind of interesting and timely.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I really love this book. I got it from the library, and I ended up buying it because I was like, I need to mark this up. I need to dog ear these pages. Yeah. I need to, it's really profound, actually, in terms of how they're talking about liquid networks and how equating sort of the states of matter to how ideas are routed and rerouted both in and out of the brain is fascinating. Yeah. And again, I wouldn't have put those pieces together to even think about them in those terms, but it works.
Yeah. What I was like saying, like it's so timely is like I'm working on these pictures that I took out west earlier in the year before the craziness.
Mm-hmm. When you say out west, what are you referring to?
Oh, so I've been obsessed with Death Valley for a couple of years.
Ah, yeah, good choice.
Yeah, so yeah, I grew up in funny story, but like I grew up in Joshua Tree.
No kidding.
I started photographing it. Yeah. My grandpa was a ranger in
the
Black
park.
Rock.
No kidding.
Yeah, before it was a park, it was a monument, right?
Right.
So we settled there because he was a ranger there, and like patrolled the backcountry on horseback in like the late 70s.
Oh my gosh.
Early 80s. Yeah, it's like, but so we would go through the Owens Valley to go fishing.
Wow.
And we'd always see the sign for Death Valley.
Mm-hmm.
And he is like retired, like he went to fish. And I was like, let's go to Death Valley. He's like, there's nothing out there.
Right. It's in the name,
like,
kid.
That's my memory of Death. Yeah. It's like, there's no reason to go. There's nothing out there. And, but he's, from that like context of like wanting to go on a fishing trip, like why would he go there?
Right.
But, I finally did when I started photographing. And like everybody else, I just like went to the dunes, went to Zabriskie Point and all this stuff. And
so you never got to go as a child?
No, we never went.
Really?
I didn't go until like a year after I started photographing. I went like on a big like do the California coast trip.
Right. Wow.
Up over the White Mountains and Death Valley. But even then, I only photographed like in the dunes and like bad water, like the places. But it was reading about the canyons after somebody actually had like a canyoneering accident, and I think 2 people died a couple of years ago. I started looking at those and people who go down the canyons, and that just like took me off in a whole other direction. And it's just like, I don't know, that's what sparked the kind of obsession in the last few years.
Wow.
But
how long has it been since you've been back?
I went in February, late February.
Just this past February? Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so took a trip in like 2017. That's when I started like first exploring like some of the canyons. And then just finally went back this past year.
Do you go solo or do you go with a group?
I went solo. I don't know if I don't know. This is like a funny thing. I don't really want to take up too much people's time, but also like maybe
same.
But anyway, but no, it was a solo trip. It was kind of needed at the time, and I had planned it for a while, and some stuff kind of almost made it not happen, and I was like encouraged to go. So, but anyway, point is, working on these pictures, I'm like, I was kind of like posted last night on social media, like, am I going nuts? Like, and is this like kind of loneliness, not loneliness, but like, the solitude of COVID, not being able to show work to people in terms of like a physical print, kind of getting in a way of like understanding what's good and like what direction I want to take things.
Well, that brings up a good point, man, because you are such a, can I use fastidious printer? Yeah, I can use that, right?
You can use that word, yeah.
I mean, incredibly detailed in your approach to printing. So what has this done not only for your output, but how you're thinking about more input because you're sort of, hamstringed by the output?
So in some ways, like I can print to a certain size at home. It's hard to lay it out because just like we have a small house and it's hard to lay out big prints.
Right.
The studio I would do the work out of a lot of for like the last 20 years. They have, big viewing areas and huge tables and all that.
Sure.
So like that, in that way, it's like been a little bit of a hindrance for this kind of new work. But for the most part, it's more the lack of time just because of trying to manage schedules and like lack of daycare and all this stuff. Where it's like, I've never had a real job, so I'm doing the childcare. It's how it's like I signed up for it. It's not. I'm not. It's what it is. But like that gets in the way more of anything else, like the time constraints.
Right.
But it's more like the living. It's hard to have big prints out and live with them for a minute, where you pass by multiple times a day to get the feeling of where the direction things are going. I'm not sure if that answers your question. But,
yeah, it does. I mean, I think
but like,
your work needs, I think, I don't get, I'm making a huge assumption here, but I don't imagine that you can tell a direction by looking at individual prints. I would think that you need to see sequences and fairly large sequences to see where things are going.
Yeah. And that's kind of where I think I hit a bit of where stuff started clicking the last few weeks, where like I started to, and especially like this last week, where once I worked on enough pictures and kind of understood like some of, not the feeling of like having made the picture, but because I think, and like I'm going to be kind of the non-traditional landscape photographer saying like I don't try to recreate what I felt, what I thought, because those are completely two separate feelings, and the whole idea for my work is like making a picture that like becomes its own experience, and
separate from the sequence even.
Oh no, so that's what I mean. Is like, so I trait the sequence as what informs one picture to the next.
I see. So there is narrative there that links them all.
The theme develops.
Yeah.
The theme develops as I work on them and as I print them. So,
man, we need to deep dive this. We need to take some more time on this.
I don't want to take up too much time right now.
No. Okay, so you heard it here. Richard Boutwell is going to do a longer conversation.
Yeah, well, it's so funny, like thinking about, just like the spark of like this book is like thinking about how series, and it's mostly how it works in series, how things originate.
and where they go based on just like small, tiny little sparks that, without some kind of like time to let them germinate,
right,
you might not have. I think it's kind of, I keep using YouTube as the like the frame of reference, just because like we're all locked at home watching YouTube, but
or listening. Come on,
things,
or listening.
or listening. I just mean like some of the popular like landscape photography YouTube,
Right.
where it becomes about the place, about the thing
Right.
that you photographed, and like not about like the deeper, larger thing.
Mm-hmm.
And like I think like having that space, allowing like giving yourself the space to kind of ruminate, is super important.
Right. Right. Let's do you want to can we say yes? Can we say we'll do like a PD and like spend an hour and a half just diving into this stuff?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Like I could talk about Prince all day long. So, and like what goes on behind it too. So,
Right. Right.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I would love to, and yeah, don't answer now, but I would love to get some of your thoughts on who's really kind of knocking it out of the park. Who's really, who lights you up when you look at the work, and maybe not for the reasons that we think. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
And how does that inform what you want to do or what you are doing?
Yeah, I can't answer it. Well, you don't want to answer right now, but
you
I'll
can.
chew on it. And
yeah, you can. Go ahead.
I think it's Ron Jude, or it might be Rod Jude, but I think it's Ron Jude, Jude.
Mm-hmm.
Just did a series they just published a series called 12 Hertz.
Okay.
And it's funny in that like I've been thinking in a similar way, but he does it to 1,000 times more than what I ever could. And it's the idea that you're photographing things that you can't even perceive the movement of, like 12 hertz being like the lowest thing you could hear, but like photographing things that happen on geologic timescales.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so, it's like the pictures are beautiful. They're kind of like muted black and white, a little bit like Brian Schumott a little bit in terms of tonal scale.
Okay.
But like actual physical scale that I think is, and subject wise, it's much, much, much different. He's like what I've been like chewing on a little bit lately.
Wow. And is the work, is it large work? I mean, it's like Bertinsky size, like 3, 4, 5 feet on a side when you're looking at prints?
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Yeah. That's, that's actually another topic I would love to dive into with you, is the scale of prints and seeing what works at what scale versus what works at another scale, and not sort of forcing, not forcing one into the other.
Yeah,
so
the work informs it. Like subject informs it.
We'll have a lot to talk about. I thank you, man. Thank you in advance. I would love
finally
to.
I was able to call in. I'm sorry I called so late on that.
Yeah. No, thank you. I appreciate it. So we were talking. The book we were talking about is Where Great Ideas Come From, Stephen Johnson. Right? Or is it? Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, that's the one. All right, I'm gonna hang up and let you play some tunes.
All right, I'll play one more tune.
Really appreciate what you're doing, though.
Oh, thank you, man. Thank you for calling. Thank you for the time. I appreciate it.
Sure thing.
All right, talk soon.
Take care.
Bye. All right, that was fun. Oh man, you know what? If you haven't checked out Richard's work, go look at it. Richard Boutwell. Find him on Instagram. Go check out his work. Super stuff. Let's play one more thing and see if anybody wants to call in. And if not, then we'll wrap it up. 202-539-0209. Or you can Skype me at Saddoris. Yeah, that's it. All right, this is, let's see, what do we want to play? This is Drake Stafford. Let's play this one.
That it's a great mistake to confuse it with nothingness. It is rather to be thought of as space, or like space, because space is not empty. It contains the whole universe. And so in the same way, the state of mind of the person who is truly enlightened is not empty. It contains everything. this, not this. Not any conception. The highest state of consciousness in samadhi is called nirvikalpa samadhi, which means literally non-conceptual.
All right. I think we're at about an hour. I'll add all these the things that we've talked about into the show notes. They're not in there now, but I'll add them in the show notes when I repost it. But thank you for being a part of this. It's an interesting thing. I'm still trying to figure it out. I'm still trying to work through the mechanics of it. Trying to it's a dance. It's definitely a dance. And I couldn't do it without Adrian sort of acting as producer, helping me out. So thank you for that. And these are fun. I hope you're enjoying them. I hope you come back, and we'll figure out a more regular time slot on. I think Wednesdays is going to be where we land, and I might play with the time, a few hours for and back to try and accommodate the U.S. and the U.K. But I think probably in the 5 o'clock, alternating maybe between 5 and 9, or maybe we'll just settle on 5 o'clock, and it's just a little earlier for people here in the States. But yeah, this has been a lot of fun. You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Jeffrey Saddoris, JEFFERY SADDORIS. And again, feel free to reach out with questions, with comments, with feedback. Leave them in the comments on YouTube or get in touch with me directly. You can also email me at talkback@jeffreysaddoris.com. And you can subscribe to all of the shows that I do by subscribing to Jeffrey Saddoris Everything wherever you listen to podcasts. All right. So thank you again for being here. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your attention. I appreciate all of the great conversation. Let's do it again next week. And until then, I'll talk to you again in a week or so.